Cheer Moms, your podcast is on.
Have you ever noticed that the littles, like especially the minis, I don't want to call out the youths, but there are some in this group. Those babies will stunt with anything they can get their hands on. They'll stunt with their American Girl doll. They'll stunt with a stuffed animal. They'll stunt with a water bottle if you give it to them. And they are just pulling elite level stunts with those water bottles. I feel like when they get to like the youth age, then they're really tumbling. And so they're doing like their front and their back walkovers, just walking down the hall, walking down the street, walking down the aisle at the grocery store. But those mini babies, they are just stunting their little hearts out. You'll see. You'll notice at the next competition. You'll see. Speaking of the next competitions, I have plans to be in Atlanta for Cheersport, Houston for NCA. I will be at USA in Anaheim, Lord willing, and a new event, the Tournament of Champions, which we'll hear more about soon, in Dallas in April. So I hope to see you there. Remember, I'm also a photographer. I do cheer uniform shoots. I do group shots. I do team sessions. And I would love to work with you and your athletes. If that's something that you're looking for, I will include the link in the description of this episode. But without further ado, this guest on today's episode has very quickly become one of my all-time favorite people in the cheer world. And the more people that I talk to about him, the more love I feel for this guy, because that I feel from other people. People are like, oh my gosh, he's the best human. He's the best human on the planet. And he's not fake. He is so genuine. And I have to agree. Corey Rickett, if you don't know him, which I didn't when I first met him, he is a well-known cheer coach. He coached Cheersport Sharks Great Whites, coached them to a few world championships, and is now speaking literally all over the world about coaching and tumbling skills and drills and building culture in your gym and among your team. And he is so remarkable. I could just talk to him all day, and I've tried before. Like, no, stay, let's talk longer. He's so nice. And he talked with me on the episode about foundational things that athletes need, that coaches need, that the relationship between athlete and coach, what that should be, the relationship with the coach and the team of athletes, and some ways that you can connect with your kids' coaches on a practical level. I'm a believer that every cheer parent should have some kind of relationship or interaction with their kids' coaches. And Corey talks to us about how to do that. He has some really exciting announcements and things that he shares. This is such a great episode. Share it with your cheer coaches. Share it with your fellow cheer moms. There's something for everyone in there. And if you get a chance to attend a conference that Corey is speaking at, run, do not walk. He is captivating. Thank you so much for joining me, Corey. I love you so much. Can't wait to see you again. And I hope that all of you get the opportunity to meet Corey Rickett. But here he is on this episode of the Cheer Mom Podcast. All right, you guys, if you're anything like me, you want the things that you wear to actually mean something, to last, and not be too, fussy. TCC jewelry isn't just all of those things. It's pretty and it's intentional. Each piece of jewelry is designed to inspire, and it's designed to last. It's waterproof, it's tarnish resistant, and it has phrases and reminders that hit right when you need them most. Anything from cheer mom to hit zero, never back down, never give up, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, faith over fear, and so many more. These are the pieces that you and your athlete can wear for the long days, the pressure moments, and even just around the house. The necklaces, bracelets, and rings from TCC Jewelry are timeless, and they're great little inspirational reminders of who you are, what you love, and why you show up every single time. Enter coupon code CHEERMOM pod at checkout at tccjewelry.com for 15% off your entire order. That's tccjewelry.com. Enter code CheerMomPod, and you will get 15% off your entire order. This episode of the Cheer Mom podcast is brought to you by all of our new favorite sock company, Apollo. You may have seen them at a recent cheer event, and they are changing the game for cheer athletes, coaches, and even cheer moms. Listen to more of the episode to learn more and find out how you can get 10% off of your order. Corey, we've been wanting to do this for a long time. And so thank you you were just saying you're spending over 200 days on the road this year, and you're currently away from home talking to me and doing this. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thanks for having me on. Honestly, when we got to meet this summer, we met at the Next Gen conference, correct, in Dallas?
Yes.
And oh my gosh, it was just like best friends meeting. It was just so much fun.
It was. We must have been best friends in another life, because
100%.
I was actually thinking about that last night when, we were prepping for the interview, and I was thinking, man, I might not ever forget the moment that I met Corey Rickett. I didn't I will confess here and now in front of everyone that I did not know who you were. I've been not put to shame, but I have since realized that I may be the only one in the cheer industry who didn't know who you were, because you are known and beloved. But I remember because I was really tired that day, and I had texted my husband, and I was like, I'm gonna do one more lap around the lobby, the bar area, because it's a networking thing, and Next Gen is always a fun hang with everyone. But I hadn't really made any connections, and it was kind of quiet. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do one more lap, and I'm going to sit at the bar with my laptop, and then I'm going to, get a couple of things done. I'm going to go upstairs and go to bed. I said, I think I'm going to have a glass of wine and go to bed. And so I was sitting there with kind of my RBF and my laptop, and wasn't really talking to anyone, but you and Jason Larkins were kind of around the corner near me and in active conversation. And I just kind of butted into the conversation when I don't remember what you guys were talking about, but I was like, my ears perked up, and I butt into the conversation, and I said something pretty sassy or snarky or something. And I looked at you and I was like, I'm Kristen, by the way.
I know, it was so great. I was like, oh my
Corey.
gosh, she's fantastic.
and then I think we ended up talking until
so late. It just kept going.
Kicked us out.
And going. It was great. Yeah, literally, we shut down the bar. Not that we were drinking it out, but they kicked us out.
We were like, we're not even drinking, and they were like, well, you still have to leave. We're like, okay.
Right.
They turned on the lights. They're like, you gotta go. But I was just so struck by your genuineness and your availability to, it wasn't just the two of us. There were people walking up to you, and I remember there was a mom and her athlete that came up to you, and I remember it was 1:00 in the morning, and you were giving drills and pointers and notes on her tumbling, and then you gave mom your number, and you're like, text me, and I was like, who is this person?
Right.
What? So okay, enough gushing about you. I mean, no, not enough. There's never enough gushing about you. I've done enough talking. Let's kind of go back and talk about
Tell us about how you first got into cheerleading.
So I really first got into cheerleading over a really hot girl in high school. I was honestly,
Always the
I
story.
was
Either their best friend bribed them or there was some pretty girl.
right. Oh yeah. I was a gymnast. I had traveled all over the world with my dad. He was in the Army. So we were stationed everywhere from Colorado to Alaska, down in Texas. And I ended up in power tumbling very young and then switched over to artistic gymnastics later on in my life and ended up training with Bart Connor, Nadia Comaneci out in Oklahoma. I had some time in Texas with Texas Tumblers, which was a great program. And my dad ended up getting stationed up at West Point. And when that happened, I didn't really know if I was going to stay like in the gymnastics world. I had a few injuries, these type of things where it's like, is this really going to be what I want to continue to do? And the head coach of the men's collegiate program, his name was Doug Van Everen, and the assistant coach, Carmen Gogano, was great. They took me under their wing and said, we'd like to see you coach. I was young. I was a freshman in high school. They were like, can you take part of our rec program? We'll kind of take you along the way and just make sure you're doing things well. And from there, it kind of grew into meeting the cheerleaders at my high school that were taking classes and lessons, them finding out I went to the high school and saying, how do we get you to do cheerleading instead of just coaching gymnastics? And I was like, there's no way. I'm not going to sit on a sideline and just hurrah, hurrah. Because in my mind, that's what it was at the time. And one thing led to another. I ended up joining cheerleading, went to an all-star cheerleading gym, and got a full ride scholarship over at Hawaii Pacific University. Spent time out there, was the stunt coordinator at Camp Woodward throughout my time in college. So it just kind of grew and grew and grew, but really it was just opportunities that presented themselves that I just said, okay, yes, I'll give it a shot. So
Okay. And then overnight, you just became one of the most celebrated and skilled coaches in the
well,
industry. That's how it happened, right?
I,
Just like, and then you just became that.
I stop it. I felt like I grew up with gymnastics and tumbling. So gymnastics and tumbling was a lifestyle. It was just something ingrained in me from a very young age. Like being able to start coaching literally when I was 13 years old was just incredible. Having those beginner kids and having those coaches that took time to say, hey, you have to learn about flexibility. You have to learn about strength, every aspect of the body in order to get an athlete to progress forward. And then not only look at them in a physical sense, but understand their mental and emotional state. And how do we start to harvest that to make them the athletes that can be better and better people when they leave our sport? Because not everybody gets to stay in gymnastics. Not everybody gets to stay in cheerleading for their lifetime. So what are we giving them as a coach? And once I finished at Hawaii Pacific University, I ended up going to Pennsylvania. I directed at a very small gym for about a year. And the ownership changed during that time. And me and the new owner just really didn't see eye to eye. I thought our philosophies were different. So I stepped back. And during that time, I had an old friend from college reach out to me and said, there is a gym in Canada that I was supposed to do a camp and clinic at. And I can't do that anymore. I've now got a job as a banker down in Texas. Do you want to take this job? And I was like, you know what? I just stopped at this program. I've got some free time. Sure. He was like, hey, well, these two crazy Canadians are going to call you. Just giving you a heads up. So they shot me a call, and it was Allie and Alana over at Cheersport Sharks. And this was before they had their first world titles, before they had the Netflix show, all that kind of stuff. So it was just a Canadian gym that was just looking for somebody to come up and help a clinic. And I was like, yes, sure, I would absolutely love to. Ended up going up there in December and fell in love with the program, fell in love with the kids and the environment. And they ended up bringing me back up almost right away. It was like the end of January, beginning of February. And that trip was only supposed to last about a week and a half. I stayed a full 3 months, all the way through the end of basically April when they're going to compete at Worlds. And that was the first year that they won Worlds. And I had an opportunity to help Great Whites and clean up the routine. And I always just was a coach that was learned that it's not the coach that creates a championship. It's the athlete's want and their ability to make that happen. And how you said earlier, I didn't know who you were. I try to stay under the radar in a big way because I want my athletes to lead themselves. I want them to be the visual point of their success. It shouldn't come down to a coach. And I still hate it to this day when I hear coaches say, I got the athlete that skill. I did this. I did that. Well, you gave them the tools to do it. But if it wasn't for that athlete that wanted to do that and to possess that ability inside themselves, they wouldn't be able to get there. They wouldn't do those things. So I always let my athletes kind of lead by their example. And I hope that what I give them rubs off enough to really showcase that. And I went to Sharks. I stayed for 3 months. And at the end of that first year, and let's go like a full another season, I was going back and forth doing camps and clinics. Allie Moffitt reached out to me and she said, hey, my assistant coach for Great Whites is moving. Her husband got a job. I think it was in Thailand, some random country. She was like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. But out of everybody I've ever met, I want you to coach Great Whites with me.
I don't blame her.
It was just a thing where I was like, oh my gosh. Like I thought she was kidding at first. Allie is like a sister to me. I was like, Allie, I was like, you're kidding. Stop it. I was like, thanks. I was like, what's the catch? And she was like, no, really, if we can make this happen by the beginning of next season, I want you here. So that happened at, what event was that? That was at Spirit Sports in Myrtle Beach, is where we ended up having that conversation. So it was really close to like Worlds. I think that event is in March. By June, I was in the country with a work visa, coaching teams, going at it. And now fast forward, 11 years that I was with that program. I went from being a coach of Great Whites to being the director of team success. So working with every single team in their program. I coached Great Whites, Gray Reefs, Star Spotted, Beanies, which was their level 4 team, Junior 3, which was Zebra Sharks, Wobbies, which was Youth 2. So I had a hand in level 2, level 3, level 4, 5, 6, and 7 at the time. And I got to see these athletes grow through the program. And now to see that program win multiple world championships back to back to back and see the continued success of that has been really, really neat.
It's incredible. And just to hear your humility and not making it about you. I think that is, I think that people can practice that skill, but you truly have a gift for putting the spotlight on other people and making really meaningful connections, I think, with everyone that you come across. That's been my observation. I mean, we could just like hit stop on the podcast right now. We've all come away with just kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling. But we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going because now you are, like I said, traveling all over and teaching workshops and working with teams on routines, but you're teaching workshops and giving talks. Tell us a little bit about that, the kind of talks that you give. And I mean, once I started following you on social media, you pack rooms and everyone's got their phone up recording everything that you do, everything that you say. They are captivated. So what are these things that you're teaching coaches literally all over the world?
Well, about over 10 years ago now was my first opportunity to speak at a conference. And I was very fortunate enough that I met Lisa Coyne and Kenny Feely at the time, who owned Spring CDT. And they took me under their wing. And for a while, I was their only full-time employee outside of Kenny and Lisa. So on top of working at Sharks, they gave me really a opportunity to travel internationally, see these athletes build, some really, really awesome skills, while at the same time really understanding every area of the industry. Every country is different. Every aspect is different. And like I said before, I felt like tumbling was my lifestyle, but stunting really became a passion. So when I kind of balanced that and how my gymnastics brain worked, I looked at every single area of cheerleading as what I would do in gymnastics as like an apparatus or like a specialty. So if I needed to be good at tumbling, great, check. Standing, running, tumbling, done. Now, how do I take that and harvest that into stunting? How do I create drills and mechanics and everything that an athlete needs to be successful in stunts? Same with pyramids, same with baskets, same with dance. I sat for hours on hours and hours and I broke down, how do I make this formula for a dance to hit a really, really strong score sheet to be successful, and multiple score sheets, because there's not just one score sheet in this industry. Why they do that to us, I don't know, but trying to balance that. And
it's the war cry of every person in the industry.
Oh my gosh, you go to Canada and they're on IASF or the Cheer Canada, and then you come to USASF, and then you go to Worlds, which is their own score sheet, and then you go to Germany, which is the European United score sheet, which is completely different. or you have the open score sheet now. And it's just, there's so many different ways. Same with high school. Every state is different, but they compete at UCA. That has to be a combined score sheet. It's just so crazy and convoluted with ideas. And I get it that we're trying to balance things, but it's I think in a way kind of hurting our athletes because they're learning so many different disciplines while trying to balance a coach that wants to be successful and be competitive. And how do you balance that? So I felt like Kenny and Lisa really gave me the opportunity to learn stunting correctly and to do great things with that, and gave me a pedestal to speak at these conferences. And now we've started our own company about 2.5 years ago called Fab Cheer, Flipping and Building. And we've been everywhere from Bogota, Colombia, all over the US, to Canada, to Europe, to Australia. It is constant. We're on the road over 200 plus days a year. We do like mini coaches clinics and conferences at these gyms that we go to. So we make sure the coaches training is correct. Then we do stunt building where it's like technique and cleanup and things along that. And then we do routine cleanup and choreography for some of these gyms and corrections of score sheets. And then we do these really big tumbling clinics. I think one of the coolest experiences I've ever had was speaking at a varsity conference years ago and them realizing the room was too small because 85-90% of the conference was in my room, and them opening up the partition wall and literally having 2 halls listening to just a conversation on that was stunts. So
And what's
really
the
neat.
feedback? I mean, that's incredible. And I'm not surprised. I don't mean to glaze over that. I'm just like, that's not surprising to me. What's the feedback that you get of why so many people want to learn from you?
In a way, they always say it's how I break it down. I don't try to make it sound smarter than what it is. I make sure that it's really done in terms that people understand. When we're looking at a skill, it doesn't need to sound smart. I tell that to people all the time. The smarter you sound, the harder it is for people to understand. We want to boil it down to the basics. I want you to understand it at its root cause. And if you don't, I'm always available. I give the coaches all the time my numbers, my email. And if ever I'm on the road and they're like, hey, I'm really stuck on something, can you help me? They reach out to me immediately. I had a coach actually yesterday reach out with some legality issues in their stunts. She's over at Fame at their main location at Midlow, and it's level 1. She goes, I want to be so creative in level 1. How do I make this legal?
Those
Sometimes
level
there's
one
an answer.
legalities, I've learned so much in the last couple of years about like level 1 specifically and how like inches can make a difference in their height, in like the height of a stunt. It's wild.
Oh, it's crazy. My heart goes out to those level 1 coaches because everything they do is so scrutinized to a point where it's like could be
Yes.
legal, but then it's a performance error. And now that created the legality.
Ugh.
And it's just, it's hard. It's hard.
Level 1 specifically, it's just level 1. And would you agree like the youth division?
Oh my gosh.
Because of they have some very specific requirements. We're not going to go down that
Yes.
rabbit trail, but like if you have a youth level 1 athlete specifically, buy your coaches a Starbucks because they are literally pulling out their hair trying
Gosh,
to
like
make everything
many
right.
youth level 1 coaches, I don't know how they do it. Many coaches especially, they go through
Okay.
these stunts, they go through the tech, and then they come back and it's like the athletes only retained 60%. So now they're reteaching it again, going through it. Oh my gosh, every time I go into a gym, I'm just like hats off because they're so incredible. So
It's
incredible.
no wonder that I know of a well-known level 1 team at a very high, at a very large program, and some coach friends of mine happened to be in the gym during that team's practice, and they were like, they run it like a military boot camp. The way
Yeah.
that and like the way that they have to get those youths and minis to pay attention and I had always wondered why this team was so successful. And they're like, it's because they're like, now, do it now, drill.
Right.
And they're very sharp in their tone. And it's almost like you have to be. And the kids have to, because the
Right.
kids have to take it seriously. It's not just like, okay, now like do a forward roll and yay, everybody gets a sucker.
Exactly. And like they're instilling the foundations for these athletes. And I
Sure,
tell that to
yeah.
coaches all the time. Like it's not about a full, it's not about a double. It's about the foundations of which you're building. So like in stunts, a sponge, a prep, things that you use for your entire like cheerleading life. If you don't have a coach that can make those skills happen well and do it consistently, oh my gosh, when they get to like the world's caliber, those are the skills they have issues with.
This episode of the Cheer Mom podcast is brought to you by Apollo Performance Socks. As a longtime seasoned cheer mom, I have seen firsthand how demanding this sport can be on young athletes' bodies, especially their feet and ankles. Enter Apollo Performance Socks. These socks are seriously a game changer. The targeted support and compression have made a world of difference, not just for athletes, but for me, I'm not an athlete. It literally feels like a hug for your feet. I had a cheer mom tell me it feels like these socks were licked onto my feet by kittens. Apollo Performance Socks help athletes to practice longer, recover faster, and focus on performance instead of pain. If your cheer athlete is dealing with foot or ankle issues, I highly recommend giving Apollo socks a try. Visit apolloperformance.com and use code CHEERMOM2024 for 10% off of your order. That's Apollo, APOLLA, performance.com, and enter code CHEERMOM2024. You give some other talks that are kind of separate from skills. I was super interested in one that you told me you were either developing or that you've already given about keeping kids' attention in a social media age.
Yes. So I've done a few different talks on just coaching in general. So I've got 2 degrees. I've got a psychology degree and a bio degree. And I really rely on my psychology degree a lot when I work with athletes. So one talk that I actually gave at the Next Gen conference this last year was coaching the next generation and balancing the Gen Zs, the millennials, and Gen Alphas, all these things that are coming through and what their experiences are and how do we connect with these athletes. It's almost like giving an HR conversation to these coaches. As crazy as that sounds.
They need. I last 2 episodes ago, I was like, they need this continual training. They need lots of voices giving them this kind of advice.
Well, these generations are evolving so much quicker and they have different resources than we never had. With AI, for instance, coming up and being such a big thing now, where we used to go to the library, go through a thesaurus, look for something, go through, heck, I remember
card
a Rolodex
catalog.
Yes,
we had a whole day in elementary school of how to research in a card catalog. I don't think,
Where's Dewey Decimal? I don't know. Let me find Dewey.
Yes.
And now these kids, you give them a question, they're like, hold on, ChatGPT. 5 seconds later, they have an answer. And we never had that as kids growing up. So that to us, in a way, seems very different. And it's like, how do we get an athlete to work for a longer goal when they usually get immediate goals and responses off of technology? I want that reward, but that reward's going to happen in 9 months. When we get to that last event, if that is our goal, is to win Summit, win Worlds, place, be on podium, make day 2. That's our goal. And that's going to be in 9 months. It's not going to be next week. How do I coach you to want to stay active and attentive to get there, where everything else you do in life is an immediate reward? I want an answer, boom, it's on my phone. I found it. It's
I want
hard.
Food, boom, somebody's going to bring it to me in DoorDash.
Yes.
I want.
Oh my gosh, DoorDash.
Yeah, you can. Yep. You can get everything at literally the tap of a finger.
Yeah.
So 100%. How do you coach that? What are some highlights of that? How do you?
So
I think we could all benefit from a little advice in this area.
Well, what they're finding is that kids today, they don't like to be coached one-on-one and to be singled out. They want to fit more into a mass group. So if something is wrong, when I was an athlete, they used to say, Corey, why are you doing that? That's really wrong. Fix this, this, and this. It may have been in front of everybody, but that was the norm. And I just took it and said, yep, I'm going to fix it. That was it. Now if we do that to an athlete, especially in these newer generations, these Gen Zs, Gen As, they break down. They're just like, I can't do this. Emotionally, they're unstable, where they can't continue through to make that correction. They feel now they're not working for the fix, they're working to not make a mistake. So they don't want to be right, they're just afraid about not making a mistake.
Okay.
So these responses and things that we have to give them have to be in a group setting. It's like, hey, this is the correction. I want to see you guys do this. My main base is keep your elbow in, cover the foot more. My tumblers, get your legs together. And then we have to do a lot more video playback with them. We have to do a lot more quick video playback. I have to give them a video that's no longer than like 10 to 15 seconds. Basically a TikTok, something that's quick and to the point. They want to see it, they want to understand it, and then move on. If it's a long, drawn-out video with like all these different comments and feedback, they get lost. They lose the attention in order to make those corrections because everything they get is in a very, very short kind of setting.
So fascinating. And I've seen that as I've traveled to been in different gyms, that you see the teams gathered around not just a phone anymore. They have monitors up in the gym. And so they'll run a section or run a stunt, and then everybody's circled up watching a video. And I think it's interesting because even my generation, I'm getting older. I was going to say I'm on the younger side of like the parenting generation, but I'm not anymore. But like even millennials like me, for the record, are wondering, well, like, why aren't they working all of the time? And why are they sitting around watching TV? I'm paying for them to be working stunts and things like that, we're losing a grip on. We're losing what am I trying to say? We're losing the vision of, because we didn't grow up. We grew up without internet and without all of the things that you're saying, that we don't even speak the same language anymore as the kids that are in the gym, as our own children in a lot of cases.
Oh, 100%. It's like that old saying, are you going to work harder or smarter?
Yeah.
Back when we were athletes and growing up, we worked hard. The expectation was to go in and you were going to be, you were going to be like your body would break. Like we were there to grind, to push as hard as we could, to leave that wherever sport it was, physically, mentally exhausted and going, yep, this was a great day. Where the athletes today, I feel like, don't follow that same footprint. They don't follow that same formula. They're trying to work in a smarter way to say, hey, this is how you're going to learn the best. Let's learn this way. And every athlete is different. Like there's visual learners, there's auditory learners, there's mechanical, there's kinesthetic learners. There's different ways to coach every kind of athlete. And I will tell you, the teams that I see that are successful every single year, the coaches do a really good job understanding who's a visual learner, who's a kinesthetic learner or mechanical learner, who, needs to go and, hear the correction and then see the correction afterwards. Or who do I need to go grab their hand, put it in the right part of that stunt and physically help them do it 3 or 4 times for them to go, oh, this makes sense. It's about finding that learning group and just pushing them forward to do that.
So how do you individualize your coaching in a sport that is so about the team and everyone looking the same and uniform? I mean, I'm just even thinking about, learning styles, personality types, girls on different parts of their cycle where they maybe have lower energy. You can't individualize for everyone. How do you individualize for anyone?
So it is hard. And I'm not going to say it's something that can happen overnight for a team or for a coach to be able to understand that. But the best thing to do that I found that worked for myself was, first, it's always auditory. And I'm going to find those athletes that hear a correction, can make that quick response and go, yep, I can make that correction in the moment. And then usually what happens is there's a filter down effect that starts to happen. Those auditory learners are going to go to another athlete on the team and say, hey, I think he means you want those, your elbow in like this. Don't just bring your elbow down. We want your elbow in front. And might actually start to help another friend or an athlete that doesn't learn that way to start to manipulate their body to do it correctly. And then those visual learners that are like need to see it. I love doing group chats where there is a constant video playback of something, where they're giving responses and they feel like they're in a role of authority. I want them to go through a routine and say, hey, I want you to break down, if you're a flyer, I want you to watch every single main base on the team and tell me what they do well, what they do not so well, and then something that you would fix. And then these flyers are going to watch just the bases. They're not watching themselves anymore. They're watching another role. And now they're kind of getting an idea of going, maybe I'm falling out of the stunt because she's trying to make this correction and I'm compensating. I'm going the other direction with my body. I'm not helping her make the correction. So now it's kind of helping those visual learners. My auditory learners have heard me say the corrections. Now they're going to start yelling on the floor, saying different feedback throughout a routine. And I'm going to tell you, quiet cheerleading does not win. Quiet cheerleading does not do well. I want teams that are loud. I want teams that are talking the entire time. And as weird as it sounds, I've had athletes that can't talk cheerleading on a floor. One of the first years I ever coached Great Whites was an experience because they had just won Worlds for the first time. They were getting ready to go back to back. And I had a base in particular that when she thought about a correction, she overdid a correction. And we found this out halfway through the season, that she would get on a floor, she would get really nervous, really anxious. Her bases would say like toe down, elbow in, move, freeze, like do all of the words that we would use in order to do well. She couldn't handle that. She would overdo it. So what started happening was her side base started giving her math problems in the middle of a stunt. 7 times 2, 9 times 5. I'm so serious. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. But it got her brain out of overthinking and just allowed her to go on autopilot, which is what she was really good at.
I love
It was
that.
wild. But it worked. And it worked. And they came out with another world championship.
Wow. That flyer sounds like me if I was a flyer, or
Right?
it just sounds like me in my everyday life. I need somebody to like walk next to me and give me math problems just all the
Right?
time.
Just something to keep the brain different.
Yes.
But, I really
Wow.
do see athletes today that they overthink corrections. A lot of times they're afraid to make a mistake. It's not about, hey, you can do this and do this well. You're going to be okay. It's about, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. I'm worried about letting my team down. I'm afraid to let my coach down. And because of that, they go more into a reactive state instead of a proactive state. And I really get on my athletes hard about that, is I want you to be a proactive athlete. And if that means getting ahead of a mistake, you're ahead of a mistake. If that means you're fixing something before a mistake, that's really what you should be doing. Good teams are proactive. Teams that aren't so, doing well or need more help are usually reactive. The mistake has happened, and now how do I react to that mistake? And that doesn't always have to be in a routine. That could be off the floor. That could be how we're training. Are we being proactive athletes or are we being reactive athletes? I think that's really important.
Oh, and I love that. And you clearly have a gift for coaching that I think 90% of coaches maybe don't possess. But on that note, when you talk about athletes not wanting to disappoint their coaches, of course, I think that's innate in all of us to some extent. But then you have the coaches, which I'm sad to say there are a lot of, that will say, I'm disappointed, that will say, you're not worth coaching if this is how it's going to be. And these are real things that I have heard athletes telling me coaches have said to them, parents telling me that coaches have said to them, we'll see you at the pool tomorrow because you're not making finals. There's this culture of what coaches believe to be tough coaching, what coaches have experienced in their own athletic experiences. So they're just emulating what worked for them, or maybe not worked for them, emulating what they've seen. What's your take on that? How do we burst that bubble and infiltrate the culture with more proactivity than reactivity?
Well, I feel like coaches look at things as like they want to coach the physical and the mental side of the sport or any sport, but they forget about the emotional side of the sport. At no time as a coach, and I've had very successful teams. I've won World 6 times as a coach through my athletes being so awesome at what they've done. But at no point did I ever go into an event saying, we're here to win. We're here to do, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. Never was that in my terminology, the things I like to talk to them about. I was like, your job today is to go out and hit 0. Your job today is to go out there and do your job and to make sure that, and something that I got from Debbie Love years ago was, hold the rope. It is your opportunity to hold the rope for somebody else that might be struggling in their moment to be able to succeed as a team. And although it takes a team to be successful, it takes one individual to make sure that that team is going to push forward in the right way. And I know competitiveness in coaches can bring out the worst in people. I've seen some great people be so terrible in a competitive situation. In times where I was like, this is a child sport. It is a child sport. For some, it is a recreational activity that they do at a competitive level. They're there to see friends sometimes. They're there to, do other things. I always say, like, there's so in my tiering of athletes, there is a participant, an athlete who just likes to show up and go, I made it. Today's my day. I showed up at practice. I want a gold star. Yep, you got it. You get a gold star. You are here. They're the ones that talk a little bit more. They're over with their friends, but they're just so happy that they're in the gym. They're seeing their friends. They're doing something they enjoy, but they're not going to really do more than what you ask. And sometimes it's really hard to get them to do what you ask. They're participants. They're just there. The next big step up from that is the competitor. The competitor comes in and they're like, I'm here to compete. I'm taking this serious. They're going to do everything you ask of them in the gym. Go condition. They're going to go condition. Go do this stunt 10 times. They're going to do that stunt 10 times. The next tier up for me from that is what I call the contender. And that contender is an athlete that will really put the work in the gym. They do what you ask of them. They do things outside of the gym, maybe a little bit more. They're stretching more at home. They're working out more at home. They're, watching videos. They're really invested in the sport. And those are the ones that, might be a 1 or 2, placement kind of athlete. They want to be first. They want to be second. They want to be in that position. And then that final athlete to me is what I consider the champion. And those are the ones that eat, sleep, breathe, drink the sport. They are, in a way, part of the cheer cult. They just want everything to do with it. They can't get enough of cheerleading. If they could live in the gym, they would live in the gym. And that's less than, maybe 1% in your gym. There's not many of those champions. And when you have a team, you have got all of that around you as a coach. You've got the champion and you have the participant. And you have to remember, they have to balance each other. And if you're so in the mindset of I'm coaching the champion, that participant's going to go, I hate this. I don't want to do this. It's too much. Why am I here? She's yelling at me so much. He hates me. He's so loud. Everything I do is wrong. Now you've broken them down so much mentally and emotionally that you're not going to get the physical out of them that you want. So for me, I really try to peg hard in the first month of training where my kids are. I don't tell them who they are, obviously, but in my mind, I'm like, she's a participant. There was this girl I coached for years. Her name is Sophia. Oh my God, I love Soph. She used to come in every day at practice. She's like, yo, Coco, I'm here. I was like, yes, you are. And that was it. That was her shining moment.
Well, and the funny thing is, especially with girls, the competitor next to her is giving her the side eye, like,
yeah. Oh,
like,
she
you're
hated her.
not special.
No. And she's loud. She's distracted. She's not doing these things. But when you got her into the role with the right kind of a group, she did her job. And those were the kids, the participants to me, were the ones that kept the morale up on the team. When the team was so upset and angry or broken down, they didn't have a great day. Those were the kids that were like, you're going to be awesome. Isn't it great being here? We're going to do this again tomorrow. It's going to be better. Compared to that champion or contender or even competitor that were like, I hated this today. This is hard. I didn't do my job. I let myself down. But those participants are the ones that are like, hey, we're going to be okay. So they're such a vital part of the team, but it's like knowing how to coach them. And are there serious moments with those kids sometimes with any of my athletes? 100%. Where I'm like, hey, we have to break this down, but it's not about yelling. It's not about getting in their face, making them feel like they're not worthy of what they're doing. It's about how can I help you as a coach to be successful? I want to see you come off that floor feeling excited and knowing that you did your job and you did what I asked you. And that's why, I circle back to not saying to a team, we're going to win. We're not here to win. We're not going to come out as a world champion. You're here to go out there. I want to see you hit zero, do your job, because I've given you the roles and responsibilities that I know you can handle as an athlete and that you're going to be successful at. And then it doesn't come down to me. It comes down to your judges and what they really think the comparison is. One of my favorite Great Whites, and it's crazy as it is, she had her birthday 2 days ago, and I ended up giving her a call. She's 25. She's an open athlete. I haven't coached her for years, but I've got such a great close relationship with so many of my kids where she's got a big girl job now. She's working for her parents. She's all she's feeling successful. I shot her a call And she was the one that gave me my nickname Coco way back in the day. And I was like, Renono, I was like, happy birthday. I was like, God, you're getting old. She's like, not as old as you, Coco. I was like, you're right. You're
Never
right.
as old as you.
And when she was on Great Whites, the last year she competed on the floor, she primarily was just the tumbler. And I'll never forget sitting in warm-ups. I walked over to Reno and I said, hey, like, are you nervous or anything? She's like sitting just crossed her arms. She's like smiling and she's like she's in her own little groove. And I was like, are you good? Do you need to do anything? You need to warm up? And she goes, no, I'm about to hit 0. She's like, I'm not going to make a mistake. I was like, everything is good. I don't need, extra focus. Just, I got it. And I was like, okay, you got it. Great. And she does every time. And that's how I like every single one of my athletes to feel when they hit the floor is I've got it. So, when I hear that there's those coaches that go out and say, you're not good enough. Well, I'll see you at the pool, those type of things. It's not an athlete problem. It's a coaching, problem. And not every team is going to win. Not every team is going to be top 3. Not every team does make day 2. Some teams just want to make day 2. Some teams just want to break 90. They're like getting on the floor and being competitive. That's going to be so good for us. When having those different goals is important. And something I really want to peg really hard with the coaches out there is don't look at your end of the year event as the culmination of your season and how successful you were. Your season is a journey. And if you can't have those moments where you feel successful, happy, and have enjoyed that climb with your kids and enjoyed that journey and had those really, really fun moments, it doesn't matter whether you've lost that end of the year event. Those kids are still going to love what you did all season. They're going to want to come back and be a part of what you're doing. One event doesn't create, meaning for that team. It should be everything that has led up to that moment. So
Yeah,
so
there's
important.
a well-known athlete that I was having a conversation with that said her last performance on the mat at Worlds ever. She said, we knew we weren't making it to finals. We knew that. That wasn't even the goal. Of course they wanted to hit, but she said it was the culmination of our relationship with each other as athletes and coaches that we just wanted to enjoy each other on the mat for I'm getting choked up, for one last time. And she said, I'll never forget that moment. Like, it wasn't a perfect routine. We knew we weren't going to win. We knew we weren't going to make it to finals, but it was an unforgettable moment. And that every athlete and coach could have that mindset so that they can have that experience. Because I think that everyone deserves to feel that way and to feel like no matter what the score sheet says, I'm proud of myself and I love the people around me. And I fear that is not the case for many teams. And what a shame that is, because one thing that you said to me that really made it just the light bulb went on. You said, when you don't have that kind of relationship, coach to athlete and athlete to athlete, that's what leads to burnout.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because then they're just there. It becomes a job. It isn't fun anymore. They're coming in like, that's why so many people, even in their regular work day when they're adults, they go in, they're like, I hate doing this. Why am I here? I've got to do 40 hours. Like, I hate going to work. It becomes a job. And it shouldn't be a job. It should be something that, gives them the escape from life outside of the gym. You come in, you're like, I'm in my good place. I'm in my happy place. I'm so excited to be here. And you're 100% right. It does. It creates that burnout.
So how do you've had this theme woven through our whole conversation of, I remember this athlete and calling this athlete by name. And, these are adult athletes that still text and call me. And I think you mentioned you go to weddings and they invite you to their weddings and to be part of their lives as adults. Practically, what do you, other than just your magnetic charisma and truly your gift, Corey, for your gift for being able to connect with people, what are some practical or tactical things that you credit to building and having those relationships?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I've always done is when a team comes in for a practice, we always do a big circle for our stretch. And during that time, I'm walking around the floor. I'm not a passive coach. I do not just sit at the front of the floor. When they're doing full outs throughout the season, I'm on the floor. I'm behind a stunt group. I'm like cheering them on. I'm like, you got it, grab the foot, like move, giving them the corrections in the moment, dodging tumblers, all the fun things on the floor during a run. But during that moment of a warm up, I go to every single athlete and I say, hey, like, how's your day? How was school? What's going on? How's your family? There's I go back to one of my junior 3 kids I coached years ago. Her family's been in the process of adopting a child for 5 years now. Literally, it's been 5 years. And every time I get to see this athlete, we talk about it. I haven't coached her for years. I reach out to the mom every now and again, or she reaches out to me. She's like, we got through the next step. Like, this is where we're at. And it's because I don't just care who they are as an athlete, I care who they are as a person. And I instill that with my kids too, with a ceremony I do at the beginning of the season. And I call it welcome to the ring or welcome to the circle. And it goes back to my time as an athlete at Hawaii Pacific University. And what I do is it's usually during the fall before season starts. I go somewhere out to this big field. We make this big fire for the athletes. So it's like a big fire pit. And I give every single athlete a candle. And we line up. They don't get to have their phones during this whole event. So it's very disconnected from anything. The parents can reach out to me if there's a problem. It's just the athletes in their own state. My first oldest veteran of that team will go out and stand by the fire pit. And then the next athlete will go and then light their candles together. And they will have a 2.5-minute conversation face to face with each other. And then they'll stand side by side. And then the next athlete will come up and light her candle off of that oldest veteran again. They'll have a 2.5-minute conversation. And then she goes to the next athlete, does the same thing. And we'll continue all the way around, including the coaches, until our circle is finished. And in those 2.5 minutes, there's sometimes athletes that have, practiced all summer with people on their team who have never had a true face-to-face conversation. Mm-hmm. They've never had a moment to relate to that individual. And it might be the oldest and youngest on the team. They're like, I've never talked to her. Well, great. For 2.5 minutes minimum, you're going to have to create conversation. Ask them about who they are outside of the gym. You're going to have to ask them, what they like to do. What is their interest? What is your interest? I'm creating human connection and creating a want to learn who they're cheering with. And once we finish that circle, we're all standing with our candles lit. We talk about how a circle is a really, really strong thing in nature. We talk about how that circle unifies us together as like zero deduction runs all season, and that we're going to always strive for like Ohana, with the O being that as a symbol. And that no matter what we do, nothing can ever break this circle. It's like a chain. We're always going to be together. And then we make a big wish together as a team and we blow out our candles. And that first moment together, I feel like creates such a bond with my teams that they don't lose. I've seen teams that I've done that with now being older, having those athletes in their wedding party. Having those athletes be a part of their, when they have kids, part of them, like helping them raise that kid. It's crazy to see how close these athletes become, through those seasons doing these things. But I do contribute a lot to that.
Wow. And I've been reading, there's something very powerful about ceremonies and having that definitive start and end to any season of your life, not just a cheer season, but moms, opening ceremony for the summer season and closing ceremony for the holiday season. There's something about pausing and reflecting and marking something that does something to our psyche and our relationship and connection with ourselves and with other people. You're doing so much more than just an icebreaker forcing athletes to talk to each other. There's something powerful about, the circle and the visual with the candles. And bravo. I think that every gym should do a version of that. Every team should do a version of that where they're creating that connection.
And I think it's important too to say that, when you do team bonding, a coach should show up and be present to, say, hey, I do want to see you outside of the gym, all together, and like not having to focus just about cheer. It creates that kind of a better relationship. And I think that's really important. I've seen, some programs when I first moved to Sharks. Nobody did anything like a team bonding or team retreat other than Great Whites. And if a team did a bonding, the coaches weren't there. They're like, I'm not getting paid. I'm not required to be there. I'm not going to be there.
If I go for one, I have to go for everybody.
Exactly. But at the same time, you're trying to be, once you want to be a successful coach, you have to be able to connect with your kids. But two, like, I want these kids to know that I'm human too. When I do something funny or make a mistake, I want you to laugh at me. I want you to say, oh my God, why did you do that? Like, that was so stupid. Instead of being afraid to approach me or just, say something, to think that I'm going to, come at them with daggers. And like you said earlier, like there's sometimes these coaches say these really cruel and mean things, and words have such emotional pointiness to them.
Especially words from a coach or a leader in your life.
Yes. Oh, 100%. When I have my serious conversations with my kids, they know it's serious. Like my tone might change. I'm looking at them like this is serious. But everything else out of that is like, we get to have fun. We're doing something we all enjoy together. How great is that? How many people get to say, I'm doing something, I love to do, and I'm doing it with people that love to do it together? And not many. I want them to get good work. I want them to be successful. But if you're just making it such a crazy, stressful environment all the time, they're going to hate what they do.
Agreed. And Corey, I wish that we could just make copies of you all over the place and have more of you in the industry and the world. And I appreciate that you are duplicating yourself by way of speaking at these conferences and teaching and making yourself so available. This is still, we have a lot of coaches who listen, and I hope that the coaches and owners who are listening have taken notes. Like, guys, pull over and write this down. But it's still the Cheer Mom podcast, and we have more cheer parents than anyone. So what is your advice to the parent who's listening that's like, I wish our coaches did a fraction of this. I wish my kid's coach would be like that.
I have two daughters myself. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And I'll tell you, as a coach, my mentality from when I had kids completely changed as a coach as well. And it's crazy because you don't think things like that change. But once I had a child, I was like, the comments and things I heard from a parent really did hit home more to me. I was like, I understand this, and I think making sure that you can go to your coaches and say, hey, these are my, things that I would like to see my athlete do or be better at, and understanding the coach at the same time. Like sometimes that coach might have a idea of how your athlete is going to progress. And maybe that's the question, not always, why is my athlete not in this stunt? Why is my athlete not doing this tumbling pass? It could be more of a conversation of, how do I get my athlete to be in these roles? What can she do to get better? I think how we phrase it to some of these coaches, and some of our younger coaches especially, is important in order to balance that. I think, asking for, just like at school, to have, some form of a parent meeting. And if those coaches are like, oh, I'm guarantee if you're like, hey, I'd love to have a meeting with you, the first thing they're going to go, oh God, what is she upset about? What's going to happen when they come into this meeting? And saying, hey, I'd love to have a meeting with you about, how I can continue to let my athlete progress. I want to make sure she's on the right path and the things that we can do better to do that. I did one-on-one conversations with my parents every single winter. So from December to early January, I did basically like parent-teacher meetings where these people, my parents came in with their athletes for like 3-4 minutes. And it was like, I love what she's doing here, but she's getting to an age where she's getting a little bit taller. She might not be flying anymore. And that's not a bad thing. But we need to make sure that she's getting her strength done. She's maintaining her flexibility. Here's some tumbling classes that she might do really well at. And I always used to tell my parents, not everybody can afford tumbling classes. Not everybody can afford these extra things in the program. So go to YouTube. Find some things that they can do as at-home workouts, at-home flexibility to get better. And it will be available right to you, right in your hand. But making sure that dialogue exists is very, very, very important. And also communicating with your athlete in the right way. I feel like when athletes sometimes might have a bad day in tumbling or with a certain team, they come to the car, they might be angry, they might be upset. And the first thing I feel like parents do is they want to have that conversation with the athlete. What happened? Why weren't you throwing your pass? You're here every day and I don't see you doing your tuck. All these things that are now reinforcing a negative instead of going to your athlete and saying, hey, you know what? It's okay. You're working hard. Let's keep pushing this and let's figure out a balance of making this better, or not even having the conversation at all. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes to have a bad day at work, go home and keep talking about their bad day at work. Creating the disconnect is important for the athlete in a big sense. But I think too, from the parent to the coach, that balance has to be there to make sure that happens.
Yeah. And I am such a fan and a proponent of, you need to have some kind of relationship with your child's coaches. That doesn't mean that you have to be the team mom. It doesn't mean that you have to be in the gym every day. It doesn't mean that you have to be in the gym every week. But even just a 5-minute conversation twice in a season is a relationship and gives you a better understanding of your coach, your kid's coach, yes, but who your kid is when they're with them, because we all have different dimensions and facets of ourselves that my coach might bring out one side of me where my bestie brings out a totally different side of me. And as parents, we know our kids best, but we may not have ever seen that side of our kid because we're not in that room with them when they're being coached. So it'll give you insight into your kid and who they are too, when you just have those little touch points. And one thing that I did when my daughter was younger was I would always call the coach at the end, near the end of the season when it wasn't too busy, but I would say, okay, we're heading into evaluations. I know what her wish is. I know what her expectation is. What is the reality here so I can manage the expectation? And it wasn't like, is she going to make a level, whatever it is? And does she have what it takes to fill in the blank that those are the answers that we want to know. But when you phrase it like, okay, what's the reality? What are the possible scenarios here so I can manage that expectation at home or in the car on the way to and from practice? And you'll get your coach will let their guard down, because I've not met a coach that doesn't love cheerleading, and they love talking about cheerleading. And you'll learn a lot when you ask, like you said, Court, ask the right questions and phrase it the right way. Right. That's so valuable. So thank you for all of this. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And
if
I do want to leave
go ahead.
One more thing just with your parents out there is, I feel like the industry for the longest time have always said, trust the process, find this or do that. And I feel like that term has kind of been lost now, where everybody just says trust the process.
No one even knows what it means.
No. Yeah. So I want to say to those parents out there, if you're in a program where you feel like your athlete isn't enjoying what they do, but they love the sport, then it's about not always the process, but the culture and the enjoyment. Like I said, a 3-year-old that just started dance, and she was in the youngest class, and they moved her up to the 5 and 6-year-olds. So now she's a 3-year-old with 5 and 6-year-olds in a closed dance studio where I just get to hear things. And I hear, my daughter, her name is Nolia, and she's getting, yelled at, Nolia, watch my feet, watch my feet, watch my feet. And when she comes out, even being 3 years old, I'm like, Nolia, how was dance? And she's like, I loved it. It was so good. I had so much fun. I'm like, okay, kid, like this is the place we want to be. This is what, where she finds the enjoyment. And I feel like so many parents, in a way, can be competitive through their athletes.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's really just listening to, are they enjoying what they do? I've had athletes. One of the coolest things, I've got an athlete that has qualified for the Olympics coming up as a bobsledder. I've had athletes that have
that
left
core
the
strength
sport.
that you gave them and all those drills.
Oh
it's that core strength.
I've got some that are full ride scholarships, being competitive rowers in college, not doing cheer. But it's not like, oh, I wish I would, you would have done this or you would have done that. They're so happy in these roles. They're so happy doing these things. And it is truly listening to them to make sure that's where they want to be. And maybe the gym that she wants to be at isn't the gym that is placing top 3 all the time, isn't the one with, all these titles. But when she comes out of that program, she's like, I worked hard, I got better, and I love what I'm doing. Then you're in the right spot. I think that's so important.
Yeah. Totally agree. And not to say that there won't be moments where it's not fun and where you're not happy or you have a bad day, but parents, you'll know, you know where the theme is. And that's a privilege of being the parent. It is being able to kind of zoom out and help our kids have some perspective that, okay, today was a hard day. I get it. Let's sit in the hard day, and then tomorrow we're going to move on. And knowing whether your kid is truly happy or not is you'll know. So Corey, how can people find you and benefit from knowing you and from the expertise that you have to offer?
So we, our Instagram is a great handle. That's Fab Cheer LLC on Instagram, or my personal, which is Shark Coco. I'm always available for any messages. I'm on the road so much. I love to get messages to help athletes to see their growth and development. So if you're a parent and you're unsure, you're always able to reach out to me there. I'm speaking at a few conferences this season in the States as well. I'll be at the Next Gen Conference. I'll be also at the USASF Conference for coaches. Yay. So that'll be really exciting. And it looks like I'm going to start doing some high school conferences as well, which is going to be really, really fun. So I'll be heading out to, I believe it's Oregon this year. So I'm going coast to coast with all these things. And then something that we have kind of in the works coming out soon. We do have an app coming out actually soon to help parents and athletes at home. I know we didn't really talk about this too much, but
no, but I'm so excited because you told me this the last time we saw each other.
Yes, it's gonna be great. And the app is really gonna focus on some more at-home training, things that you can do smart and safely with your athletes at home in order to progress. But also as a parent, kind of give you the idea of how do we get them from step A to step B, or from a back walkover to a back handspring, and what that process really entails, and what you should expect as a parent at home. So that's something that we're really looking forward to.
How can we get updates about when that's going to be available?
We'll be actually posting some updates really soon on our Instagram about it. The app is going to be called Headquarters. So this hopefully, as this continues to grow, it won't actually just be in cheerleading. So if you have multiple different kids in different sports, whether it be football or hockey or lacrosse or track and field, we're looking to pursue all these different avenues for these kids that just want to stay active, right? It's my biggest thing is, as a coach, I don't want to see kids' bodies break down like mine did as an athlete, and I just want to see them, live great, amazing lives as adults and have all these great things that sports can instill in us.
So exciting. And we have international listeners. So Corey, you're going to be in Australia for a month?
Yes, I go to Australia in February. I'm speaking at a conference out there and traveling to a bunch of different programs, which is going to be great. And then in September, I'm speaking, I believe, at a conference in Germany in September. And we'll be going to a few gyms out in the UK as well.
So exciting. Yes. Follow Corey in all the places. I will link them in the description of this episode. Thank you again, my friend. If I don't see you before then, I will for sure see you in Nashville at Next Gen this year.
I hope so. Thank you again so much for having me. And honestly, the parents out there, if you ever have a question, want to reach out, I am always available. So please do.
Love you.
What up, party people? This is Jason Larkins, host of the Let's Talk Cheer podcast, and I've teamed up with Kristen Wheeler of the Cheer Mom podcast and Dan Cotton of the Cheer Biz podcast.
That's right. Hey, everybody, Kristen here. We know that you love cheer, so why not dive into more perspectives? Tune into my podcast, the Cheer Mom podcast, for cheer issues spoken from the parent's perspective. Then head over to Dan's podcast, the Cheer Biz podcast, to learn from a gym owner on on how to run a successful cheer business. And of course, don't miss the Let's Talk Cheer podcast featuring Jason Larkins, the one that we all know and love, where they talk about cheer from a coach's perspective.
Which means whether you're a coach, a cheer parent, or a gym owner, we've got you covered. Find all 3 podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and stay tuned for new episodes each week.